Well, good morning. Thank you for joining us for Going Deeper. Kev, thank you for being with us today.
Yeah, happy to be.
Yeah, as we've unpacked a little bit in the service, we are in a bit of a different time. We're back locked down. And I would encourage our home groups to engage with this. I know home groups can't meet this week or next, possibly, but as we've wrapped up this Ephesians series, I think it'd be really important for home groups to land with this as well. So home groups, can I encourage you to keep this one saved somewhere and look at this next time you're getting together, because there's a lot we just want to unpack and just sort of finalise maybe. But not only finalise, we got a sense that whatever came out of this series through Ephesians, we're expecting a lot of it just to stick, aren't we, in us as a community?
Absolutely. I mean, I think our whole season out of last year of pausing is a rebuild season in the life of our church.
Yep.
And you've heard us talk about real clarity and almost a bit of a change of direction about how missional we do want to be, how we want to be really focused on other people, and what does it mean to be the church, and
That's
how do we
right.
live that out. And so not just assume what that is or do what we've always done, but to kind of go, how do we lift our intentionality on being the church? So that's why I've even loved that kind of title that you guys come up with about being the church, because that's the bit that my hope sticks out of Ephesians, and go, well, who are we as a community of people?
That's
what does
right.
it mean to be in the church? I mean, what a privilege, number one.
Yep.
But then how do we live that out? What does that look like? And so that's great for home groups to keep talking about that.
Yeah.
That'd be a great question in home groups to go, what has stuck for you
that's right.
out of that season? That would be an interesting question.
Absolutely. So I want to sort of start at the end and work back. I love just your prayer at the end. Your prayer for us as individuals, for us as the church, and for people praying for you as well, that we would be willing to, the word surrender just kept coming to mind for me, that we would be willing just to surrender our lives, to say, God, wherever you have placed me, wherever my go places are, would you use me to show others who you are and what you're about?
Yes, that's a great prayer. Hey, I've just seen coffees come in. Can I grab that coffee, Jeff? That'd be awesome. You're a legend.
All right.
And I think you're having hot chocolate.
I am going to try hot chocolate.
Nearly converted Andrew
it is a
to
bit
coffee.
cold.
We'll go that. Cafe's
Cafe is
open this
open.
week.
Okay.
Plug for better days. Better
Thank
days.
you.
Thanks, Jeff. It's a good point of surrender, because, I mean, if you saw the message that I shared, the story at the end with Lance, it was great to meet Lance, right? But if I'm honest, it was Friday night. It was probably about 8:30 that he first come over to our table, and we were there till 11:30. That's when the gig was finishing. And I'm thinking, I just want to chill out.
Yeah.
I just want to be here. I just want to be by myself. I bought some things to do, and then someone comes over and sits down and starts a conversation. And I was just really confronted with that surrender, with that others-focused scenario. And so most people know I'm an introvert, and so it costs me to be with someone like that, for a while. And he was talking, and he was an extrovert and loving the conversation all his whole life. Yeah. And then when I found out that he was going to go home and he extended his bus trip for another hour and he was going to be with me that whole time, it's like, oh man, how am I going to just even last another hour? But it was in those times and just following those prompts of God, absolutely was that a God-ordained conversation. But I needed to actually engage with the reality of me going, this is a time to prefer somebody else. This is a time to actually
that's good.
Speak boldly and to just share genuinely just some things. Yeah.
That preferring someone else, I think all of us generally would agree that, if it came down to somebody hearing about Jesus for the first time, I would give up anything for that to happen.
Yeah, we would say that in principle.
Yeah, we would say that in principle. When the rubber meets the road, sometimes it's hard, but that preferring, and I've just been reminded that how many times I read in the Gospels where Jesus was on his way somewhere, so he had somewhere he was planning to be and was interrupted on the way. And there's something about being a Christ follower to be aware of those moments that we might have our intention, our plan about what tonight looks like or what this weekend looks like.
Yeah.
But are we willing to be interrupted for the sake that others would potentially come to know Jesus?
Yeah. Because my thinking after that evening and after that night, it was like, it was great to chat with Lance.
Yeah.
It was really good.
Yeah.
He was a great guy. He's doing lots of great things, and it did sense, and he would agree that it was just good for us to connect and chat about a whole bunch of stuff.
Yeah,
But the thought of it going in, it's like, oh man, have I got the energy to do that? But after, it's like, I'm so glad that happened.
That's right.
Yeah.
So something that grabbed me out of the Ephesians book that we journeyed through, and you touched on it significantly today, was prayer.
Yeah.
So Paul finishes with prayer in that big section he did in chapters 1, 2, and 3. There's a really significant prayer at the end of that.
Yep.
There's prayer again into 4, 5, and 6, and then finishes with prayer. You talked to us at the end of your message around being a people of prayer and needing to be a people of prayer so that we can actually be positioned to be used by God.
Yeah.
What's something you've taken out of this series around prayer and what it might mean for us as a community?
Yeah, probably a couple of things. I think one was it was interesting because that just kept coming up and up and up and up and up and up like that. It was like, for Paul, it's significant, that dependence upon prayer. And so I think we've even chatted, like, how do we lift that profile of prayer and just the way that we are the church in our own lives. So I certainly want to do that. But then also just challenged about, I think there can be a pretty stereotypical kind of definition of what prayer is, and people would think it's all kinds of things, and it is, right? But I just love Paul's simplicity around that, where, like, here he is in house arrest in this example, and he's just going, I just want you to pray for me. Can you pray for me? And I want prayer that I can be bold and speak for Jesus. And so I think we can just sometimes overthink what prayer is, or it needs to look a particular way, or it needs to sound a particular way, or, I can't pray out loud because I don't sound like somebody else who's passionate about prayer.
Yeah, we see that.
All of that. So let's just bring that down to real foundational. It's engagement with God in a very simple, genuine way to go, God, I just need you in my life. Yeah. How can I pray into this or pray for people, and just to be really active in our prayer life, about all kinds of things, but especially about our identity and our mission that God's given us. So for me, it's probably just lifted that more. And I think some of our stereotypical things is praying about all stuff we'd normally pray about, but to be really prayerful about boldness, really prayerful about mission, really prayerful about the people around us.
I mean, I'd love to encourage our home groups to actually take that on and support one another in that sphere, to be a home group, a home church where prayer is central, and it's prayer for one another and with one another for those very things, for boldness, for confidence, for opportunity, for all those things.
All that. Well, I mean, that's some of the language we've been talking about, you, me, and Jeff, quite often, is go, how do our home groups, home churches, whatever name we want to call them, how can they become missional hubs? So it's not a home group that is just for us to chat about things that are going on for our own life, and it's great hanging out with our mates. That's all really good. But there is prayer on a missional edge. There is prayer for us to be bold.
And how do we equip one another to go and be the carriers of that good news?
And what I love in that, and like I just want to see this more in the life of our church, so we share stories of that. Like Irene sharing her story today,
Jed sharing his story.
We've all got those stories, and I think they're encouraging. And like sometimes stories when they don't go well are still just as encouraging.
And I want to encourage people who don't have the sort of story that Irene and Jed shared, from really difficult times and addiction through to whatever. There's a lot of people who don't have that story, and that is not an insignificant thing.
Yeah, that's right.
Those lies that the enemy would want to put into our head around that could hold us back from sharing our story. And that's probably the last thing I wanted to touch on, that power of the mind and the power of the thoughts that go through our mind, and some come from the enemy, and we need to be able to discern that. But it really is in our thinking, and the way we respond to the thoughts that come up, that I think has been the biggest barrier to the church carrying the good news into the world around us. You did touch on it. Is there anything else in that you would have liked to have unpacked a bit further but didn't have the chance in the message?
Yeah, I just think it'd be a good question in a home group space, or even just on, even if you're WhatsApping this week as a home group or whatever, or even personally go, what are the lies that I've believed that have stopped me from sharing the good news of Jesus? Because I think the enemy's very clever there. He's a father of lies, right? That's who he is. So he'll bring a whole number of lies to the surface that we tend to believe to be true as a thought that silences us. It silences the church because it just we just need a little bit of confusion, a little bit of doubt, and that's enough to silence us. And so, I'm not good enough to be sharing. I haven't got my life together. I'm not an expert. I haven't read all of the Bible. I haven't read much of the Bible. There's other people that can do it better to me. There's people that got a gift of evangelism. That's their job. Or the Father's table do that well. There's so many different layers that I think we can tend to believe that just put enough doubt that silences us. And I would hope that we could actually understand every one of those lies, expose them with light to be a lie, and to take captive that thought and discard it, and actually believe that we've got everything that we need to speak. Everything. We've got truth in us, because truth is a person, right?
Yes.
And that's in Jesus, and his Spirit's in it. So truth is in us. And if we're praying for boldness with that truth and our story to speak when we're prompted, and we just trust God in that, that's the arrowhead that I'd want to see. So I would want to, last thing to answer your question, let's remove anything the enemy sets up against that arrowhead of speaking boldly about Jesus, and all it is lies. So let's discard them and trust Jesus that we can speak boldly, and let's see what happens with that.
And I want to encourage, we would say that we want it to be normative for people at Coast Community to be in a home group. And so it's in places like those home groups where we can have those conversations. We bring into the light the things that are going on, the thoughts we're having, the situations we've stepped into or avoided. We can really encourage one another in that. And I was just thinking as you were speaking there, one of the things I learnt when I was a teacher, a high school teacher, that I wish I knew at the beginning of my teaching career, but it took me a while to learn it, was when asked a question, sometimes my answer had to be, I don't know. And to be okay with saying, I don't know.
As a teacher.
As a teacher. So, you get asked a question, but even in this, if we're telling people about Jesus and someone asks us something that we just don't know, it's okay to say, I don't know.
I don't know.
But together, how about we look into that? How about we journey with that together? Or I'll go and talk to some people who might be able to help us out, and I'll get back to you. But it's okay to say, I don't know. And I think that the fear of being asked something you don't know
That's right.
quite often is the biggest barrier that we're faced. So look, we could keep discussing a lot of this, mate, but we won't. Can I encourage you, if you're watching this this week or down the track a little bit, in your home group, let's bring some of this stuff to light. Let's be intentional about being a prayerful community, about being a community that is open and honest with one another about these things, to share stories, because we really sense that as God has led us through this book of Ephesians and shone a light on what it means to be his church, I think there's going to be some stickiness to this that's going to stay with us at Coast Community. We're really encouraged by that. And so as you've journeyed with us over the last 12 weeks in this, maybe go back and check some of these out again. But thanks for journeying with us. Thanks for being on the journey. And we just look forward to God showing us, shaping us, and leading us as his church into the future for his glory. So thanks again for your message today, Kev.
You're welcome.
Enjoy your week of staying at home, and we'll catch you next week when we go deeper again. See you then.